Welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, Financial Independence and Long Life, where we strive for ways to achieve those two goals. And we invite people on to help us who are experts in those fields. And that's why today I'm so excited to be joined by Eunicia Peret. We've already been chatting and I love her already. I think you're going to find her so interesting, compelling. And Eunicia, I wanted to leave something for sort of a cliffhanger so that you can talk about yourself as well. But I just want to let people know that Eunicia is one of the country's top financial mentors, educators, and consultants in the financial industry. She helps hundreds of families escape financial dependency and experience financial freedom with her wealth freedom formula. And she's been nominated by other financial experts, which, is a real compliment when your peers nominate you. She was Consultant of the Year for a publication in the Consulting magazine. She's got more than a decade of experience working with the most trusted financial services organizations. And she's a happy mom and wife, which helps us to see that there's balance. And she wants you to have that same joy of, family and being able to spend time with your family and not work yourself to death. So Eunicia, thanks so much for being with us today.
It is my pleasure. So nice to be here, Christine. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. So Eunicia, can you kind of bring us up to speed? Did you know, like as a child, you definitely wanted to get into the financial services industry, or did you just sort of find it?
No, actually, I got that. That's a great question. I was not confused as a child, but let's just say that anything I touched, any class that I took, I always aced everything. So naturally, when it came time for me to choose what I wanted to do when I grew up, it was very, very hard. And even going down the path to figuring out what major I was going to be majoring in, funny enough, I started on the medical path. Then I decided that no, maybe architecture would be better. Then I decided that architecture would be too much behind closed doors and I wanted to meet people. So I love numbers. I always love numbers. I started down the accounting path finally. So when I finally made the entry into my college career, I went in for an accounting degree. And it was within about a year and a half, I held a position as a lead for to the international director for a non-for-profit accounting organization. And in my role, I was dealing with a lot of accountants every single day. And every single day I would go home with a nasty, nasty headache. Well, for shadowing about a year and a half into my college career, of course, I'm still acing everything. My accounting professors are loving me. But I took a personality test, and the personality test, funny enough, it was one of those that was kind of giving you insights into what you should be looking at from a career standpoint. And the one career that it was on there that I should not evaluate with a hard no was accounting.
So I could have told you that.
Right. So when I kind of looked at it was exciting work, no question about it, but it was also kind of boring to a certain degree. Yeah. And so what I found was that I was more fascinated by, instead of looking at numbers in retrospect, understanding those as critical, of course, but really thinking about the strategy. What will the future hold? How can we design a path to achieve the desired result? And so because of that, went ahead and of course I shifted gears not that far and went from accounting into finance. And the history and foreshadowing several, obviously many years later, I am doing what I'm doing now, because one of the biggest things that I've noticed and I've identified is that there is just such a big lack of awareness when it comes to individuals knowing what they should be doing with money. And the sad thing is, even as a finance major, even going through that curriculum, you still don't understand what is it that I need to do for me, for my financial plan personally, right? You learn about the tactics and the strategies from a financial standpoint, but when it comes to the financial operations or even just investments, hardcore investments, but nobody sits down to help students or individuals put the pieces of their financial puzzle together. And so those kind of coming together are what fascinates me. But no, I did not start as a child thinking that this is what I wanted to do.
I knew I wanted to be rich, but I didn't know how I was going to go about that, right?
Right, something like that. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, it's true because accountancy really, it's after the fact, right? You're counting up what's there. You're not manifesting or creating or figuring out where to get the numbers. And I was even thinking as you were speaking about the financial industry itself, because even many people who are in the financial industry, they're working for a company that sells a product. So really, they're just a salesperson, right? They don't necessarily know, like, oh, you sit down and figure out this person and say, okay, look, it looks like you could have, this investment or this, or, they're just saying, oh, this is what we're selling this week. You want to get this, you know, Ameripraise, IRA or whatever, and not really organically, because I don't think they truly understand it, right? They think they've been sold, they drank the Kool-Aid, they thought that was a great product and they're happy to sell it to you, but they really don't. It's a lot, right? It's actually a lot to understand.
And Christine, you're hitting the nail on the head. That was when, so in my prior life, I worked with a lot of financial experts, and because like some of the companies that I worked for had heavy regulations in terms of what I could and could not invest in, specifically because they were public auditing companies. Of course, even though I was on the strategy consulting side, those outreaches still kind of touch just about everybody in the organization. And so every time I would meet with the financial advisor, it was always it would exactly like you said, it was always the push towards a specific product. And when I started geeking out to really understand what was happening with our finances, because I didn't feel that anybody was truly vested in helping put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and frankly have the time to sit down and try to decipher what were they telling me, what were they not telling me, until it hit me that, hey, like I can no longer procrastinate, and it's pretty evident that I'm not going to get the answers from somebody that is just incentivized to sell me into something. And so when I started working with individuals and I noticed that in the industry, my biggest question was, how can we shift that paradigm? Because this is not about a product. This is not about some financial treatment. When it comes to financial independence, it's all about how are we going to get there, and why do we want to get there, and what is the strategy to get there in a way that makes us as human beings feel comfortable, not fulfilling some, again, product, just like you said, that was sold to us. And so balancing the idea of having goals, balancing the idea of understanding what is our strategy, how do we plan on getting there, and then the last component being whatever it may be. It could be a financial product, but it could be something else. It could be a non-traditional investment of sorts. And a lot of individuals don't know that they have those options or how to go about getting those options. And it's so huge. So I'm happy that you brought it up, because most people don't. It's something that they just don't bring up.
Well, you just said something else too that I think is key. It's like, why do you want these things? Because in my life of, looking for or working toward a life where I don't have to worry where my next meal is coming from. A lot of mentors are like, you have to visualize the money, and you have to, well, money doesn't excite me. Do you know what I mean? It's just to say,
Exactly.
oh, I'm going to visualize, $5 million in the bank, yawn, like what, so what? And that's not something you can get your emotion behind. It's not something you get excited about and you want to skip your cappuccino to achieve. It's just like, okay, yeah, but a whole, once you start to vision, why do I want this? What's my life going to be like when I achieve this thing? Then all of a sudden, yeah, lights come on and it's really a lot more exciting.
Yes, yes, it is, and something that Dean Graziosi says this in a lot of people talk about it, but I love the way he puts it. But he's 7 levels deep. If you read any of his books, the whole idea with the 7 levels deep is to ask the question of why. Why is it that you want that? And the whole idea behind the 7 levels is that by the time you get to the fifth or sixth level, it starts becoming a little bit more personal. By the time you get to the 7th level, chances are pretty strong that you're going to have tears in your eyes. Somebody asked me actually last week, why do you do this? And the request was, please make it more personal. And when I started really thinking about it, I literally got tears in my eyes. And I thought about just what you said, right? It's understanding the why. Why is it so important? It's important because I'm sure a lot of our listeners have lost money in the past, whether it be to real estate investments, whether it be to the stock market, whether it be to whatever else. They probably made some not so sound investments in the past, but that doesn't mean that that has to define our future. However, we do have to learn from those mistakes. And just because they're there doesn't mean that we have to allow them to limit our future potential, but rather, how do we turn those around, figure out why are we trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve? Where are we trying to get to? And then when we ask those questions legitimately, right? Whatever the reason, whether it's family, whether it's because frankly you don't want to work for another schmuck of a boss, I don't know. Whatever that is, when you find that why, and you think, let's say the 5 million, and you think about the 5 million, now the 5 million has meaning because it has thought behind it. But way too many individuals, they just think of the 5 million, just like you said, and it's not going to just show up in your life unless you truly have a purpose and unless there is a defined reason why you see that that money should be coming into your life. And then chances are it will, but you also have to be aware to the opportunities that present themselves, because that's another trap where people will see opportunities but they go right back into their shell. I've experienced losses, I've experienced negativity, and so I can't move forward because there's always a because. And so it's important to get past the because in order to make our dreams come true.
Absolutely true. So do you feel like, tell me about the holistic approach, right? Like taking into account, like not just investing money, but also not spending money, right? Saving money on taxes, saving money on different things. How do you kind of, what's your procedure when you sit down with somebody and you're trying to like get a grip of their whole picture?
Absolutely. So before I answer the question of the kind of how we go about it, I'm a strong believer that in order to have a truly customized, and I know that customized and personalized are such overused words, but when you sit and think about what does that truly mean at the core, it's not about even some process, although processes are critical, but it's about what are some of the key things, what are those key things that are making the approach a whole. And so at the Empower Financial Planner, we believe that in order to make that approach whole, we have to look at more than just investments. We have to look at more than just what's going to happen with the money, where should the money be, etc. And one of the big things that where we're seeing people are leaving money on the table is in the area of taxes, just like you mentioned, right? They leave money on the table to taxes and they end up leaving a tip to the IRS simply because they don't know. This is not about tax evasion. I want to be very clear. This is not about not paying taxes. This is about being smart with how we pay taxes, because the tax code was written in such a way that the individuals who want and who desire to keep more because they work so hard can do so absolutely legitimately. And so one of the pillars that we focus on very heavily is how do we optimize taxes? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't do tax preparation. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CPA. However, because of everything that I've seen, because of expertise that we've gathered throughout the years and in working with so many clients, we know that most 99.9 of the individuals are not optimized when it comes to taxes. So the least that we can do is to, I call it to poke the bear, to get the client to understand that there are specific things that need to happen. And then we ask them to have a conversation with their CPA, to have a conversation with the person that's doing their taxes. And in most cases, for the business owners that we work with, we actually become the linchpin and we become the individuals and the team that helps bring the entire team together. CPAs, bookkeepers, tax consultants being kind of on the forefront. Then the second component, which is really big, is not just what is going to happen with the money, but how do we want, what feels good to us from an investment perspective, and how do we regain control of that money in a way that's, again, meaningful to us. And so this is kind of where the financial expertise come into play, thinking about what are those different tools, tips and tricks that we can leverage, because otherwise individuals end up being sold in specific products. We don't want anybody to be sold. People need to understand what their options are, the pros and the cons, so that they can rest and sleep well at night, knowing that their money is doing what it should be doing. And then last but not least, we have to be thinking about what's going to happen. I love your story, right? What's going to happen when we want to retire? where is our income going to come from? And let's say that we have $500,000. Could we make that $500,000 in retirement perhaps work for us as if we had a couple of million? The answer is yes. We absolutely can, but not without the right planning. And so that planning, we can never start early enough, too early. And so when we start planning and we are able to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, what we have at the end of the day is we have a retirement, we have a time in our life when we want to no longer work for money that actually is meaningful to us. It's rewarding to us because we are able to achieve whatever it is that we deem as financial independence. So in our world, the holistic approach is by really looking at all of those pieces. And of course, there are subsets to each one of those, but the one caveat that I would say is making sure that you have the team that's working for, not against you, because it's not enough to just have a CPA, to have a tax person, to have a bookkeeper, to have a financial planner, to have an attorney. If there isn't collaboration among those different parties, there is no way that at the end of the day you're going to truly have an optimized financial outlook.
Wow. And that's pretty rare, isn't it? To have that team assembled where they actually even know who each other, they even know each
Very
other, and
rare.
let alone working together.
It is so rare. As a matter of fact, I have not come across even one client that works with a quote unquote team where the team knows exactly what each other are doing. And so for our business clients, we actually enable that. We go to bat, and this is because of my expertise in strategy consulting. It's one of my clients said, Eunicia, the work that you do, it feels like you're herding cats. And I will
So
tell you,
true.
most of the time it definitely feels that way. So it takes a very unique skill set to be able to herd those cats. And it's not because anybody's is not wanting to do it. They're not incentivized, they don't have the time, it's not how the industry works. And so we need to circumvent that. And for the individuals and the small business owners that we work with, what we do is we may not necessarily be the conduit to deploy it for them, but what we do is we make sure that we give them questions, and then we have check-ins to say, okay, so what did the CPA say? Well, they said this, that, and the other. Let's do this. Why don't we figure out ways to get you some additional insights? Because what we also find is that oftentimes individuals will work with folks that don't really do preparation in any of those categories. It's just like taxes, for example. It's just about the tax filing. Well, the tax filing does not necessarily equate how do we understand the tax code and how can we make it beneficial to us and our personal financial platform. And so it's all really all about bringing it all together and asking the right questions. And that's what we do for clients, and we do with clients is where they don't, some people just don't even know what to ask because they don't know that they can. And we give them the platform, and we give them the environment where we not only encourage them to ask questions, but we teach them, here are some of the questions that you should ask, here's some of the things that you should be aware of, so that we can start enabling that planning across the board, not just when it comes to money.
So it's so powerful. And I'm thinking about when I changed CPAs, and I went in and met with the guy, and he said, oh, bring me your taxes from last year. And we sat down, and he just quickly sort of scanned through my taxes from the year before. And he said, oh, do an amended return, change these things. And then I ended up saving enough money to pay him for 2 years just because of the changes that he suggested for a prior year. It was, and you just don't know, right? It's not like I'd been doing my own taxes prior to that. I've been paying someone actually more than I paid him to do really a shitty job, just to have me bring all the paperwork, have me put everything together, and they just filled in the blanks on the form.
Yes. And we don't ever want our clients to be in that situation. I'll give you an example of exactly what you said. I have a brand new client that just joined us recently. And when we started working together, his situation is he's a W-2, but he started laying the foundations for a new company that is going to officially launch probably next year. But the reality is he's already talking to a lot of potential clients. So he's started doing marketing, he started having meetings, he's doing a lot of things that would truly qualify him to start deducting some of his expenses as business expenses because he's literally seeding this company. And so realizing, because of the depth that we go in and understanding our client situation, realizing what he was trying to do, I asked him the question, okay, your W-2, what's your CPA's philosophy on filing taxes? And he said, well, we've never had the conversation about deducting anything because everything is either paid by the company or we pay out of pocket. And so I said, okay, here's a list of questions that I want you to go to the CPA with. And because it's the end of the year, we had an off schedule meeting just to make sure that we are literally focusing on minimizing his tax exposure. And when he came back, he said, my CPA said a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to be in the 22% tax bracket. Whoop did he do? Okay, wonderful. I said, what's the second one? He said, well, he told me that the best way to minimize my tax exposure is to go ahead and open a SEP or an IRA. I said, okay, that's wonderful. But we're not talking about, again, investments here. We're talking about you legitimately have expenses that you should not be paying taxes on.
Right, exactly.
What did he say to that? He said, well, because the business is not already like truly up and running, he doesn't think that we should do it. I said, well, does he understand, like
Right.
truly understand that you've been seeding this company, that next year you're wanting to go into it with full swing and that it is for profit? Like you're wanting to do this as a business going forward as soon as you retire full time, right? He said, I just don't know that he got it. He just kept telling me about the 22% tax bracket. So, so here's the deal. It doesn't matter what tax bracket people are in. If they can't take advantage of deductions legitimately, why shouldn't they? And so that's a lot of that's a perfect example of how a CPA was so focused on just the tax filing versus truly understanding the client, what the client's trying to achieve, and putting together a strategy would then allow both of them to be successful in their own ways. But sadly,
Exactly.
it doesn't happen very often.
It's so sad, isn't it? I mean, really, this is similar in the real estate industry. You work with tons of real estate agents, and you think, how do these people make a living? My God, they just don't get it. And you same thing, like, what? How does a CPA have clients? But people just don't know how much money they're paying that they don't need to be paying.
And they almost look at it as a somebody's doing me a favor by having me as a client during this super tight time frame, right? January through April for most individuals. And what I tell my clients is, if your CPA works, wonderful. Like, we want to make sure that we work with our clients' overall financial team. But if you don't feel good about the individuals that you're working with, the companies that you're working with, you owe it to yourself to ask the question of, is there something else out there? Because the individuals that are asking the question of, what am I missing out on, actually ending up finding those lost dollars. They really do, just like the 5 million, right? If they ask the question, they will find it.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then, if we're just living and we pretend that nothing's happening just because maybe we feel intimidated or we're afraid, or we would much rather prefer to not open up Pandora's box with yet somebody else. When you're sick and you go to the doctor, you will share your whatever is ailing you, right? Whatever your ailments are, because you want to get better. It's the same thing with finances. It's the same thing with our financial platform. If we don't ask the questions and we don't open up to what those ailments are, it's probably not going to get any better.
And it's okay to get a second opinion if your CPA doesn't give you the answer you like.
Yes, especially if a lot of what I'm finding is that a lot of clients, as I start working with them, they know that there's something wrong. People that are happy, wonderful. That means that even though their team may not be talking, we can corral them and we can have the team starting to talk to each other. And that's wonderful. But way too many individuals have that feeling of, I'm not in the right place. I'm not working with the right team or with the right individuals, but I don't know what else to do. And that's where you have to have a strong team of supporters, of your think of your back office, your corner supporters, your financial supporters, people that are in your corner and want to see you doing better. Because if you're opening up and you're asking the questions, then the answers will become obvious.
Yeah, it's so true. So Eunicia, you mentioned before that, there is no incentive really for all these professionals to come together on behalf of the client. Is there anything that you do or anything you can do to sort of get them more excited about working as a team and to help this person, this company?
There's no true financial incentive. The incentive for them would be the fact that the client is in the best position possible. But oftentimes, um, if the individuals don't understand what it means to work on more of a consulting basis and they're truly driven by just selling whatever it is that they're selling with the product or service, it's much, much harder because they don't, in their mind, if they work with somebody else, they're going to potentially lose that client. And we've seen that way too often. And so there's this protective environment where it's like, no, 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 I really don't want my client to be talking to anybody else, because if they talk to a different CPA, then that CPA might have somebody else that could help them with whatever it is that they're helping them with. And so what I tell my clients is, listen, the whole idea here is, if it works, wonderful. If it doesn't work, let's fix what doesn't work. And if it works even a little bit, let's get it to the next level, right? And so that oftentimes goes back to having those conversations with the financial team, with the client's financial team, to figure out what is their stance. Just yesterday, for example, I interviewed a CPA, because some of our CPAs primarily deal with business owners, and we're always looking for amazing individuals that we can do strategic partnerships with. And I was talking with the CPA. I said, here's the situation. My clients need help. Here's what we do. Here's how we're different. We want to make sure that as the client comes through, that if there are specific things that need to be implemented or questions, that the broader financial team is at the table. Can you agree to that? And at first it was a question of, what do you mean we can just everybody at the table? Do you want us to have calls? Do you want it to? No, it doesn't necessarily have to always be a call. Although sometimes that may be the case, but at least communicating via email or however you're communicating with the client, you need to make sure that you keep all of those individuals abreast and in the loop. So if they see that there's a change in direction, they can come either on board or challenge it, based on the client's overall goals.
Yeah. I think this is the beginning of a revolution, what you have here, because it is really the logical way to do business, right?
It is, and I'm sad to say that it doesn't really happen all that much, which is why when I started asking those questions, those hard questions about my own financial situation, our family's financial situation, it became very evident that our team wasn't talking to each other. And I had to literally figure out a way, how do we make that work? And as we continue to see it working with clients, it works beautifully, but it does take quite a bit of time, especially for situations that are more complex.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What do you think is the most rewarding part of your job right now, or the part that you love the most?
The most rewarding part of my job is seeing that big aha moment in my clients' eyes, when because I show them the good, the bad, and the ugly. I show them, here's what you would typically see in the industry, and here's how we can make it better. And because of that, when they see that there's somebody that genuinely cares, because they don't understand, if I didn't go through that process, they wouldn't understand that they have options. And just them seeing and being so grateful that somebody actually cares to do the right thing, it brings me to tears almost every time. And that's a big part of having set up my business the way that I have, is because I get to actually give back so much more to my clients.
Beautiful. So, Eunicia, I mean, the time has flown by. I feel like, oh my gosh, I could speak to you for hours, but I don't want to take away your whole day. So, is there anything that we could do, even before we come to you, or even before we, if we're just sort of trying to take some steps toward achieving this place where we're uh, feeling a little more confident about our finances? What suggestions would you have for people to take sort of today, that they could make some positive changes in their life, on their financial life?
Absolutely. And Christine, to the topic of our conversation today, what I would say is, we will make it too super super tactical, right? The to do, the homework. But my guidance would be, if any one of our listeners, or if you're a listener and you have that feeling of, I may be leaving money to chance, I may be leaving money on the table, there, you have a question of, could I be doing more? Am I missing out on something? Something doesn't feel right. Do yourself a favor and reach out and ask some questions. those questions are not going to be stupid questions. They're only stupid if you don't ask them. Because if they're in your head, chances are they have to materialize. If they're in your head, somebody else has had them before you, and it's okay to ask them. Because when you do, on the other side of you asking the questions, you're going to see some major breakthroughs. But in addition to asking the questions and seeking guidance and help, if historically you've been in a situation where you're more apprehensive to take action, just know that without taking action, just asking the questions isn't going to do any good, right? Similarly to trying to envision $5 million. Well, if you just sit on the couch all day and try to envision the $5 million, it's not going to walk at the door. Unfortunately,
Darn.
it's upper.
There goes
Darn,
my strategy.
I know. So opportunities though will knock on the door, and when those opportunities knock, if you're not in tune with that decision that you took to take action, chances are you're probably not going to see the rewards that you otherwise would see by taking that action. So I know it's more kind of high level, and it's more on the intuitive side, but especially as we're going into the holidays and even throughout the year, whichever part of the year we're in, people always have, excuses sometimes. Well, we're going to holidays, I'll handle it in January, or oh, it's summer, I'll handle it in the fall, or it's spring, the kids are getting ready to go on vacation, so I'll handle it again. I'll handle it once they go back to school. Those sorts of things, and those are the sorts of things that push us back another 6 months, another year, and then this vicious cycle keeps repeating itself. So don't let it repeat itself if you don't want to end up late in life with regrets.
And it's funny, those are the same excuses people use for losing weight and starting a fitness program. Oh, it's the holidays. Oh, that's this, it's that. I don't have time because the kids are going back to school. But the other thing I want to say is, in my own life, the remedy for this kind of analysis paralysis that you were talking about is education. When I start, I was before we started the recording, I was talking with Eunicia about my previous life as a stock investor, where literally, 6 months after I would buy the stock, the company would start to go out of business. And so I just thought to myself, I just don't have good luck in the stock market. And it wasn't until, I hit 50 and I said, gee, you know what? I'm not going to live forever, and I don't want to work forever. And I better figure out what the heck's going on with financial stuff here. And I started to learn about the stock market and discover that there's a good time and a bad time to buy things, and understand how the stock market worked a little bit, to get over my paralysis and my reticence about getting involved in the stock market. So I think for sure, you're saying it sounds like it's more strategic, but really educating yourself
Absolutely. It's
is the
huge.
beginning of that strategy.
I
Yeah.
will tell you, Christine, that we do not, as a matter of fact, I've made it such a huge policy that if our clients do not, or individuals do not want to educate themselves, they just want somebody to do it for themselves, or for them, sorry. If they just want somebody to just do it for them, just handle my money, that's not what anybody should say. Because just like you wouldn't want somebody to just handle your health, or to just handle and do whatever it is for you, right? It's the same thing with money. And those are clients that we'll kindly tell them that we're not for each other. Because what we found is, when people don't educate themselves and don't empower themselves, this is not about becoming a financial investor. This is not about becoming a financial advisor. This is not about you managing your money. It's about you understanding what your options are, so that a year down the road, 2 years down the road, when questions come up, you know why you made the decisions that you did, versus going, well, so and so told me, because so and so might have been very well intentioned based on what they understood your goals were, but you are, at the end of the day, the designer of your own fate. And so it's important, super, super important, to empower yourself through knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Eunice, I would think that your services are the type of thing that would pay for themselves over and over again, right? I mean, the money that you save for your clients, the money that you allow your clients to create, right? Put your money to work and get it out there and get it working. That it would just be an investment, not a cost.
Absolutely. And I tell clients, it's absolutely, I would not ever tell anybody to look at it as a cost. As a matter of fact, just like you said, the money will multiply itself many times over, because you're finding some, in many cases, you're finding money you didn't even know you had. And in other cases, you're literally taking money that otherwise when you would be bleeding out, and you're putting them back in your pocket. And then costs are huge, right? A lot of individuals do not understand that it doesn't matter what kind of investments you're going in, there's always a cost associated with anything. So when you're working with individuals that are incentivized to lower the cost for your benefit, it makes such a big difference. And it's not just about, well, how much are you going to charge me for X, right? We get a lot of those calls. Well, how do you charge for investments, and how do you charge for, and we tell people all the time, that's not how we work, because this is not about investments. This is truly about being empowered, understanding our options, eliminating or minimizing taxes, minimizing cost, and eliminating the uncertainty of not knowing what we're doing, so that, to your point, if you know that stocks don't work for you, don't keep going after them. Find something that works and allows you to actually rest at night, because you know that you're not, there's not going to be some sort of a predicament to your choices.
Well, and this law of attraction, right? If I believe that, my stock's going to lose money, of course it's going to lose money. And then I'm going to think, oh, I was right. Now I got to get rid of this stock. And then you sell it at the worst possible time. It's just like, hello, you just have to, like you say, feel confident that what you've decided, what you've chosen works for you. And, you know,
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
somewhat understand market cycles too and stuff like that. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I mean, if individuals want to be in the market, they have to understand what it is that they're looking at. Because if they don't, again, it becomes somebody else's problem, right? If they don't want to be in the market, wonderful. There are other options for them as well. If they don't want to deal with financial anything, that's an option as well, right? There's real estate, there are leveraged investments, there are a lot of different things that people can do. It's just a matter of finding what works for them. And when they work with a team that can guide them, not tell them what to do, but truly guide them in their thinking process, and how to ask questions and how to understand what it is they want to achieve, is very, very powerful.
Absolutely. Oh, you just echo all my feelings, all my sentiments about money and empowerment and all that kind of stuff. You see, it's been so great speaking with you. I've really enjoyed it. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked you? Anything that you want to share sort of in closing?
No, not really. I think you're doing an amazing job with the podcast, and I'm just so happy to see all the different topics that you're covering, because again, it goes back to the empowerment. It goes back to individuals understanding and having an awareness of what's happening around them. That doesn't mean that they have to implement those strategies on their own. It just means that the next time they sit down with someone, they can ask a lot more articulate questions and get much, much further ahead.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Thank you. So thank you, Eunicia, for being with us today and sharing. And actually, you're going to, I think, be the first podcast of 2022. So we could start off our new year with some financial knowledge and education. And as we think about the dread of taxes coming up, we can think, oh, how can I actually pay less taxes? Right. So,
I love
Eunicia,
it.
what's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you?
The best way is to follow us on any of our social media, but also if anybody is interested in getting just a little glimpse in kind of how we think, as far as the types of pitfalls that you should be avoiding, we should all be avoiding. It really started with me. We have a giveaway for our listeners if they want to just go to www.empoweredfinancialplanner.com/pitfalls. I think you'll probably include this in the links as well. Feel free to go there. Please do let us know where you heard about it, because we want to make sure that we give Christine kudos. If you've heard it here on the podcast, it's a wonderful place to be. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you and adding value in any way that we can.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah. So as Eunicia said, all of the links to her social media and to her website and the free her giveaway for the pitfalls are all going to be in the show notes. So just check that out. And thank you for starting your new year with this with us here. It's I know you have a choice of over 2 million podcasts, and I'm very grateful that you're here and hope you got some great value, and look forward to remember to subscribe and share, and we'll see you next week.